Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. And this is executive producer of the show, the star of the show, and the one that everyone wants to see. That's Huck. And she owns Huck TV, of course. So, Huck, you're a good girl. You've been having some fun today, huh? Yeah, you're a good girl. Dad's a good puppy. Dad's a good puppy. Yeah, oh yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. Oh, Dad's a good girl. She's a good girl. And she's going to hang out with us. And oh, big yawn, huh? Yeah. She's going to hang out while we talk here. We've got a couple of good things here to talk about. So, one of them is going to be a missing persons case. Straight up unusual case. And another one is going to be about an area of the country that has a mass amount of disappearances. And I'm going to read an article about it and we're going to discuss it. So, for starters, I got away for a couple days. Not a long time, just a couple days. And I went fishing. And that's what I caught. And it's about 80 degrees, no, about 85 degrees that day when I was fishing. It was brutal heat. And that, of course, was a trout. And then, find the other thing. Can't find it right now. But anyhow, fishing was pretty brutal. That was one of the few big ones I caught. And the water level up here in northern Montana on a lot of the creeks, rivers, is very low. And it's lower than last year. And when the rivers get low, the temperature in the river goes high. And the fish in it that need to spawn can't spawn because the river's too warm. It's not a good situation. And normally I'd fish 3 to 5 days. I stopped after 2 because it wasn't right. And very sad situation, actually. All right, first case I'm going to talk to you about, very recent. Happened June 22nd of this year. A woman named Reza, 60 years old, hiking Mount Waterman in the LA County, in the LA National Forest in LA County. She lived in Glendale, California, and she was a scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Intellect. She was a director of materials processing group at NASA JPL. She was described as co-workers as a brilliant scientist who had a very compassionate side to her. Born in California, had a bachelor's degree from Columbia University in metallurgical engineering and had an MS from UCLA in materials engineering. Smart, super smart. And she was a person in very, very good shape. She hiked regularly. There were rumors that she was a trail runner, etc., etc. She liked the outdoors. There's actually a picture of her online at the top of Mount Waterman holding a small sign. Well, on June 22nd of this year, Monica and a group of friends decided to summit Mount Waterman. It's in the San Gabriel Mountains. It's a popular ski destination in the winter. 27 runs, elevation of 8,030 feet. You're looking over here would be the eastern side. LA County, predominantly where the people live, is down in this area. Over the mountain on the other side is Mount Waterman. Twin Peaks East, Johnson's Corner, Paradise Springs. Kind of get yourself oriented. Now there's several different ways to get to the summit on this area. There's one that's a 11.5-mile hike and another that's a 5.5-mile hike. Trailhead for these is in the middle of nowhere, and there aren't many hikers that hike this area. It's mountainous, steep, and dry. Yes, dry. Carry a lot of water. Well, Monica's group left very early in the morning on June 22nd. And when you summit these mountains, it's best to get up there early and get off the mountain before the afternoon. And they did. They were actually hiking back down from the summit, down the trail, and Monica was in the back. Many years ago, a person wrote an article about don't be last in line while you're hiking. It was written that way because I had so many stories that the last person in line would disappear. Sure seems the case here again. Well, at 9 a.m. the group was about 1.5 to 1.6 miles from the trailhead, and the group lost sight of Monica behind them. They stopped, called for her name, walked up and down the trail looking, calling, yelling, screaming. And they said that she was last seen on the south side of Mount Waterman. The trail name that they were on was called 6,000 Foot Trail. The 6,000 Foot Trail. And it was off the Upper West Ridge Trail in Trailhead. The group finally got down to the parking lot at 11 o'clock, and they reported her missing at that point. They waited around. Sheriff's officers arrived. They actually called for search and rescue pretty quickly. And right near this location is called the Devil's Canyon. Talked about this area many times. Other people have disappeared there. In fact, an LA County Sheriff's deputy off duty disappeared there. The Pacific Coast Trail passes through this area. It was also searched by search and rescue. Well, LA County requested mutual aid on the search, and they got it from San Diego, Ventura, Riverside, and Montrose search and rescues. They all sent personnel, and many of them sent canine units and a helicopter. The more I researched about this case, the more I was puzzled. And I'm going to show you a bulletin that was put out by the LA County Sheriff's Department. It says, detectives from LA County Sheriff's Department are seeking assistance in locating the above individual. Missing person Monica Reza, a resident of LA County, was last seen hiking June 22nd at 9:10 a.m. at 6,000 Foot Gate on LA County Crest Highway. There is a concern for Mount Reza's well-being. Any information, contact the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. There's the bulletin that was put out. There's Monica. Thin, in shape hiker. Now, what they did is they called her at risk. That's a puzzling statement for many reasons, and I'll get into that in a minute. Well, personnel went out. They started a search right away. Part of that search included a very steep, they said very steep embankment off that trail on one side. And they walked down that steep embankment, and they were in brush and big boulders, they said, and they found a beanie. The beanie was later identified as being one that Monica tucked inside her pants and carried during the day. And canines found that beanie. Now, what it was doing on a steep hillside amongst boulders I don't know. They did put a ton of resources into that area, searchers, etc. Searched for many days. They didn't come up with her. Now, the details on this entire incident are more restricted than almost any search and rescue I've ever seen. They never said if she was carrying a cell phone. They did say, the sheriff said, that there was no SOS sent from anywhere in that area. Because your cell phone, most new cell phones can send SOS messages via satellite from anywhere. They never said what supplies she had with her. They refused to name the people that she was hiking with. And the most troubling part to me is they refused to release maps of the search areas that were covered by the county search and rescue workers. It's been a long time since I've seen them failing to release these records of search areas. Because when someone's not found, volunteer searchers come in. Family hires professional searchers to come in. And what happens is they look at the search maps of what has been covered, and then they cover the harder areas that weren't covered. But when search and rescue refuses to release the search zone maps, they're hurting the families and the friends who want to search other areas, not go over areas that have already been covered. Now, the sheriff classified this as an at-risk disappearance. Why? At risk of what? Was she taking medication and she needed medication immediately? Is that what she was at risk from? Was someone stalking her? Why not say what the issue is? They didn't, and they refused to. Private parties searched for many days after this. If Monica was classified as at risk, then there's urgency to her being found. And private searches need all possible information if they're going to continue. I want to know what the conversations were between her and her hiking partners. Was she afraid for some reason? Was she scared? There were conversations online at many different forums that stated that she had hiked this area before and knew it very well. Other people said that the hikers were in an area where the trail wasn't quite readily visible in spots. So did she get lost hiking behind them? I have no idea. But I searched probably 20 different forums, sites, articles, etc. to even get you the information I have here. And there were comments made on many of the forums and sites saying that they didn't understand why the people running the searchers were keeping the information so private. Again, in the long run, it only hurts the families and the victim. So I don't appreciate it. I don't understand why it's done. It's been over 2 weeks now. Monica hasn't been found. The regular search was over after 8 days, the professional search, and they gave up. So where's Monica Reza? A brilliant scientist, a compassionate co-worker, gone. Another story. This is a conglomeration of many stories. There's a place called Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. Here's Austin. Lady Bird Lake runs right through the middle of Austin, and it's fed by the Colorado River, an arm of it. I've been keeping track of this over the years. Remember, I've talked to you many times about people who disappear and are later found in water. And I've explained to you over the years that GHB is found in minute particles in some of these people in their disappearance. Nobody ever sees the people go in the water. Nobody says that the people were suicidal. Nobody knows how they got into the location they were in. It's a complete unknown. I've said this at least 50 times in videos. I wrote an entire book about it, Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence. There's no disappearances from Lady Bird in that book because it was written before those disappearances started. You can buy that book at my website, NA like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. Well, an article came out just a couple days, I think around July 5th, July 4th. Serial killer fears grip Texas community after dozens of bodies pulled from the lake. Quote, cannot be ignored. Forensic psychiatrist questions authorities' dismissal of Lady Bird Lake serial killer theory as another young man is found dead on July 5th. Now, what I've described to you that's happened around the world is under the definition of a serial killer, but it's not your conventional serial killer. It's something quite different. I've documented this in 12 different countries, and it all follows the same profile. People now are starting to pick up on it, at Lady Bird at least, but it happened in mass in Wisconsin at one point, New York, and Boston. Let me go through this. The waters of a Texas lake remain shrouded in mystery as dozens of young men's bodies, bodies continue to be pulled from the depths, putting a community on edge as rumors of a serial killer continue to swirl. Last month, authorities discovered yet another man's body in Austin's Lady Bird Lake, bringing the total count to a whopping 38 individuals recovered from the waters since 2022. This happens in spurts. For a while, it'll be in Austin. Another time, Wisconsin. Another time, Boston. Another time, New York. Another time, Arizona. Another time, Canada. Why? Why is it happening? Etc. Let's read on. Officials responded to an early morning 911 call reporting a body in the water and subsequently located a deceased man, the Austin Police Department said in a statement on Fox News Digital. There was no trauma to the body and police do not suspect foul play was involved. They say that every time. The department is currently working to determine whether the body recovered is a 17-year-old male reported missing 2 days earlier. The teen's family called police after he got out of his kayak without wearing a life jacket and subsequently disappeared while enjoying a day on the lake. Investigators believe he had unknowingly stepped on an underwater shelf and failed to resurface after his kayak was later recovered and his backpack and life jacket still inside. I always am amazed that these articles talk as though these people don't know how to swim. They don't know how to tread water. They just step into a deep portion and boom, they disappear. Folks, that's not the way life is. Okay? If you know how to swim, you're going to tread water. Police revealed that the individual found on the lake was wearing the same clothing as the missing teenager, but ID is pending. The discovery comes as fears of a serial killer lurking in the community's midst continue to loom over the area, with local authorities continuing to downplay the risk. The denials by law enforcement and other authorities that these cases are murders or the work of a serial killer are premature, end of quotes. Dr. Carol Lieberman, a forensic psychiatrist and expert trial witness, they don't want the public to panic about a serial killer, so they are working and making light of all the deaths. Not good. Since 2022, at least 38 bodies have been recovered in or around Lady Bird Lake, according to data obtained by Fox 7. Of the nearly 36 bodies found, 30 reportedly are men. So of the 38, 30 are men, with approximately 60% between 30 and 49 years old. It all fits, folks. It all fits with what I've said all along. The vast, vast majority of the cases I documented are men. There's a few women in there, but most are men. Most are young men. Despite local authorities' insistence that there is no ongoing risk to the public, Lieberman points to the sheer amount of consistencies among the victims' age and genders, kind of like what Dave Paulides did in Missing 411, a sobering coincidence. The fact that 30 of the 38 bodies found in and around Lady Bird since 2022 are male does suggest that this could be the work of a serial killer whose preferred target is men. Giddy up. If the deaths, quote, if the deaths were simply due to accidental drowning or suicide, there would not be a preponderance of one gender over the other. This is a forensic psychiatrist, someone who knows what they're doing. One common theory circulating throughout the community suggests that deaths are a result of date rape drugs slipped into drinks of victims visiting bars on nearby Rainey Street, a popular hotspot. Well, isn't that special? GHB, folks. In February 2023, the body of Jason John was pulled from the lake 1 week after he was last seen on Rainey Street. 2 months later, Jonathan Honey, 33, was found 1 day after he was last visiting a food truck parked on the popular street. Date rape drugs could render them easy prey for a thief and killer, Lieberman said. Older men could simply be easy prey. Throughout the past 3 years, the primary cause of death of the bodies pulled from the lake have been attributed to accidental drownings. Suicide reportedly remains the second leading cause, as well as natural causes of drug overdose. As I've explained many times, taking a date rape drug, taking GHB, if I drop you in the water, you're going to drown. And then that's going to come out of your system because, I've said this at least 100 times, pathologists, medical examiners, when they examine a body, they take blood and urine specimens. And then they send that to labs to check for pharmaceuticals, illegal drugs. They check for 22 different drugs in that system. GHB is not on that list. It should have been, but it's never been on the list. Every drug you add to the list costs more money for them to test, and so they're trying to keep the cost down, so they do the most common drugs you can imagine. They would be solving a lot of crime if they would start testing for GHB. Just saying. And the reason how I know this, Dave's not making this up, is because secondary autopsies performed by parents on bodies that I documented in my book, those secondary autopsies found GHB in the system. Maybe they should be listening. Of the 38 deaths, only one has been ruled a murder, with roughly half a dozen cases remaining unknown. Unknown. Because the coroner couldn't determine a cause of death? One cannot rule out that a so-called accidental drowning isn't the result of a murder unless there were witnesses, Lieberman said. Quote, murderers can use drowning as their modus operandi. Similarly, suicides must be proven, not just assumed if one has been depressed. Exactly. I have said the exact same thing many times. And when these people are dumped in the water, it appears it's a drowning. But they have the drugs in their system, they can't fight to survive, and they drown. I've said this 100 times. Finally, somebody's getting some press. May not be me. That's okay. Additionally, Lieberman pointed to the attractiveness of disposing human remains in bodies of water. I've said the same thing. Water can cause decomposition of the body and can wash away evidence, fingerprints to DNA, she said. If the water has movement, such as a stream or a river, it can propel the body far from the actual scene of the crime, making it more complicated to find the killer. Some killers choose water-based crime scenes with the hopes of their murder will be misconstrued as drowning, which can make it harder because it can be difficult to differentiate drowning from murder. A detective named Gannon, smart man, worked for New York Police Department, had a series of murders in New York, and what they were listed as were drownings. He started to realize that some of the bodies were found upstream from where they supposedly fell in or were placed in the water. And then he started to realize other things. The person was missing for 6 days, but the body only showed being in the water for 2 days. Well, how can that be? Or the person had only been dead for a day. Where had they been? All of these are questions that need to be answered that I am sure that if you started to look into the forensic data on the deaths at Lady Bird Lake, you would find a disparity between the amount of time they were dead and the time they'd been in water. Police pointed out the vast majority of deaths at the time occurred after the park's closing time and encouraged community members to be mindful of local rules. Yeah, right. In a 2023 statement, Austin PD looked to quell the public's fears surrounding the possibility of a serial killer targeting men in the area, citing the lake's dangerous conditions when mixed with alcohol. The police department has not found any evidence to support that these deaths are suspicious or connected to criminal activity. They're bozos. What can I tell you? If you keep your head buried in the sand, you will only see sand. Unless they go to the coroners and tell them to start testing for date rape drugs. GHB, they're going to keep having the ability to keep their head in the sand. They stated all of these incidents have been thoroughly investigated and the vast majority have been determined to involve factors such as mental health issues, natural causes like heart attacks, inability to swim, substance abuse, or underlying medical conditions. Excuse, 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 excuse. Why not step up your investigative function? I'm not talking specifically to the police department. I'm talking about the coroner, medical examiner. However, as more and more victims continue to fall to the waters of Lady Bird Lake, Lieberman calls on authorities to not turn a blind eye to the morbid coincidences surrounding the deaths. And quoting her, unless law enforcement finds some other explanation for the large number of deaths in and around Lady Bird Lake in recent years, Lieberman said, then I think that the likelihood of a serial killer cannot be ignored. Giddy up. One more time. Unless law enforcement finds some other explanation for the large number of deaths in and around Lady Bird Lake in recent years, Lieberman said, then I think that the likelihood of a serial killer cannot be ignored. Excellent. And I need to say this, that there's hundreds of cities in the US and Canada that have lakes in and around the city. And that have bars in the city. And there aren't deaths by the dozens at these lakes. This issue tends to migrate point to point. It'll stop after a while. And like I said, it happened for a while in Arizona. Happened for a while in Wisconsin, then it stopped. Happened for a while in New York, stopped. Happened for a while in Canada, stopped. And no, these aren't serial killers that are going town to town, folks, because they happen decades apart. Many decades. I have cases in New York in the early 1900s where this was happening. We do have to be perceptive. And if you live in Austin, I'd write a letter to the medical examiner and explain what is going on here and start testing for GHB. As I've stated before, a medical examiner in a big jurisdiction got a hold of me one time and said, Dave, I want you to make a presentation at a medical examiner's conference on really what's happening here. Being ex-law enforcement and having all the cases you have, you'd be able to lay it out for them that GHB needs to be tested for. I wrote a proposal to the conference and it stated what I would be speaking about, and I was not accepted to speak. I think they want to keep their heads in the sand. But if you are married to a medical examiner or you know somebody that is, tell them I'd be glad to speak. I'll be glad to talk to them. Because we need to start curbing these deaths. Lastly, in every one of these instances that I wrote about in my books, nobody ever saw their friends that later ended up in a creek, river, or lake. Nobody ever saw them leave the bar. So how did they get out of the bar? And I have cases of people who disappeared from the inside of a bar with constant CCTV of the exterior points, and they were never seen exiting. How does that happen? Please explain it to me. All right, so that's good on that. Now, remember, this is the kindness revolution. Costs us nothing to be kind. Smile, be happy, cheery. Ask somebody how their day is. You're going through the checkout counter at the supermarket. Persons have a miserable day. They're looking down. They're not happy. Hey, how's your day going? I did that just the other day to a lady. And she looked up at me like I had 3 heads, and then she goes, well, thanks for asking. The little impact you can have on somebody's day by just being happy and friendly is huge. So remember that. Also, all 3 of the documentaries I've made are free on Tubi. Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection. I encourage you to watch them. If you think you know the complete picture of things, it would be impossible to understand that without watching the documentaries and reading a few of my books. And you can get my books, and there's 12 of them, entitled Missing 411. You can get them at most libraries. If the library doesn't have them, ask them to get it, because they can get it. Do not buy my books anywhere online other than me, otherwise you're going to get ripped off. Amazon is asking between $100 and $200 for my books. Same with eBay, etc. They're just ripping you off. Books are $25 to $30 on my website. NA, like North America, bigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. Thank you for being here. Be kind. Be polite. Polite us out.